Looks good. We didn't have any special guests this week, and I understand we have a new AP reporter, so that's exciting. What is your name? Isabella, welcome. Yeah, that's really good. You know, I think Eggert got started as an AP reporter, didn't you? Were you AP? Yeah. Just think about that. And he just won the award from SBAM, the Small Business Association of Michigan, the top reporter in Lansing. So just think, and he started as an AP, a reporter, so just think about what could be someday. If you keep working for the AP, you keep writing stories. AP is a tough one to work for. So they have a high demands, but just there's opportunities. And and I understand I won the award next to you, Mr. Eggert. So he was the reporter of the year, and I was the legislator of the year. And by the way, I mean, did you write that profile on Joanne Hulse, David, or who wrote that? I wrote it. You wrote that? That was an incredible profile. I thought it was a really good profile, and you know, we work a lot with Joanne Hulse, and nobody's ever written about her before. Do you know what I mean? So it was a really good story, honestly, and people here in Lansing should read that. People around the state, really, because she's a very impactful person, and nobody knows about her. So that was a really good story, I thought. It was really good. So have you been here, David, since they put the you see that? The portraits up? Full color. It's really nice. So, yeah, they don't have a color one at Winnie Brink's in her conference room. It's black and white. And I said to her, because we've been talking and meeting a lot, they probably won't tell you that, but, and I said, you should come look in the speaker's library because ours is color. But if you can get into the Senate Majority Leaders Conference room, which I can, because I meet with her all the time, and I go in there and it's black and white. It's amazing, but it's a beautiful color picture. So we'll see. I think it'll stay color after I'm gone, Beth, but we'll find out. So anyway, sorry you guys haven't seen me as much lately. I've been talking a lot with other principals, other leaders, talking about budgets and things like that. So, we passed a budget it was 2 weeks ago. It was a long time ago. We passed a budget through the House, a school budget, and not just K through 12. We passed 5 budgets that touch every part of the school aid fund. We passed them weeks before this July 1 deadline that, is an aspirational deadline. And we're trying to get a K through 12 budget done by July 1. That's what House Republicans are trying to do. I've been here a lot. I've been here over the weekend. I've been meeting all the time, trying to get a K through 12 budget done by July 1. That's something I really believe we can do. There are a lot of conversations that have been going on between Tim Kelly and Darren Camilleri, something the Democrats probably won't admit, but there's been a lot of conversations, and honestly, I've seen some of the public comments from Tim Kelly where a few days ago he thought they were 70% there. I think there's a lot of momentum towards getting a July 1 budget done on the schools. And, I don't know. I'm never very comfortable with this. I like to be a very transparent person. Not everybody that I negotiate with wants to be transparent. Now remember, I'm the leader of the biggest ethics, accountability, and transparency movement in the history of Lansing, HEAT, the Hall Ethics, Accountability, and Transparency Plan. But I'm not going to say everything because there are other people who don't want me to say certain details about negotiations, which, I'm not going to say who they are. But I will say this. I do think that you would see that myself and House Republicans are very optimistic and very I believe we can get a July 1 K through 12 budget done. I also believe that we can get a roads deal done, at least announced by July 1. I do believe that. I think that there's a lot of alignment in terms of how I feel about that and how Governor Whitmer feels about that. You know, I wish, you know, I give the governor credit because she has been talking to myself, and I won't say who else she's been talking to, while she's been in Australia and other places. I'll just say that, you know, I feel that there's alignment with the governor and I that we could do something on roads, that we could do something on education, and maybe we could even announce it by July 1. That's how I feel. I don't see a lot of reasons we couldn't do that. There's a House plan on the table on education. There's a Senate plan on the table on education. You heard what Tim Kelly has said about there being 70% agreement. He said that a few days ago when he was talking. And then when you look at roads, there is a clear House Republican plan on how we can fix our roads. We just prioritize roads over the corporations and the earmarks for lobbyists. We can do that very easily, and we don't have to raise anybody's taxes. Now, you've seen the governor put some ideas forward, a framework on how she feels about roads, but at least she has some ideas. It would be nice if the Senate Democrats could come up with a position on roads, okay? One thing that I think is important as we do the budget negotiations is that because we're talking about, and when I say we, I mean House Republicans, because House Republicans are talking about fixing our roads without raising taxes, it makes sense to do roads as part of the budget, okay? I hear Democrats talking about how concerned they are about the DHHS budget, and you know, the media falls for that, and the media writes story after story about the DHHS budget and the federal government, okay? So the media believes that, okay? So I'm trying to convince the media here, so I'm just speaking to the media. So if you guys are so concerned that the federal government is going to cut the DHHS budget, then it does kind of make sense to set the DHH budget aside for a moment and see what happens with the big, beautiful bill, since, according to the media, there could be swings in that DHHS budget, okay? Now, I'm very supportive of the big, beautiful bill, and you know, I've been on the record talking about how important I think a lot of those policies that President Trump has championed in that bill. But I just say, if there is some uncertainty in the DHHS bill, it makes sense, you can kind of set that aside for a moment and then work on that once we have more knowledge about what's actually going to be in the bill. But right now, for education, there's no barrier to doing education, to negotiating education, to working out education. There's really no barrier to that. And if you can lock in education, and then you can lock in roads, what's left? Everything else. And then you can say, okay, this is the amount of money that we have to spend on everything that's not roads and education. And if that's cuts, well, then we know they're cuts. And then we've got between July and September 30th to figure out where those cuts come from, okay? But if you try to do everything at once, you're probably going to get the status quo. I mean, when is the last time they fixed the roads? They never fix the roads. They're not fixed. Ask your people. The local roads are not fixed. So I think there's a lot of merit, and I think if you were to ask the governor, she'd probably agree with me that there's a lot of merit to starting with roads, starting with education, working hard to get that done, hopefully by July 1, and I think we can do it. especially school aid, but potentially both, like at least an announcement on roads by July 1. And then you work from there to say, okay, let's say it's a cut. Well, then you can work the rest of the budgets to figure out those cuts. And let's say, you know, we want to see the big, beautiful bill before we know exactly what we're going to do with DHHS. Okay, I mean, that will probably happen over the next few weeks, and then you can work through that. So I think there's a lot of merit to that. You know, I've appreciated particularly the conversations with the governor. I think there's a lot of alignment with the governor in terms of the timelines, and I'm hopeful that we'll get something there because, you know, I just say, I'm not sure everybody here wants to do a deal on schools by July 1. I think some of them, they just want to blame me and blame the Republicans because it helps them for political reasons. But I'll just tell you, there are no barriers to doing a school budget by July 1. You just have to get serious about talking about those details and working it out. And, you know, I mean, I did a lot of good deals I've done a lot of big deals since I've been here. I mean, I just received an award a couple days ago in person for the most effective Republican in the House. And it was one of the biggest margins. I think it was the biggest margin in the history of the MERS survey, how much I won most effective by. And maybe you'll confirm that tonight, but I think it was their biggest margin, honestly, in the history, how much I won most effective by. And, you know, so I've done a lot of deals. We did deals on the sick leave and the tip credit, and, you know, there were some tough times there, but when you work together toward a deadline and you put in enough hours, you could resolve it. And I still think we can do that on K through 12, and I think we should do that on K through 12. And I think the governor probably agrees with me on that. So you guys can explore for yourselves, but that's just my opinion about things there. And then I'll just say, as we pursue those negotiations, and by the way, and I know Eggert wasn't here last week. You were probably covering Joanne Hulse, and I get it. That was a big scoop you got with that one. But, you know, Sarah Anthony recently said that she's willing to blow through the July 1 deadline. You guys saw that in most of your story. Most of you even quoted her on that, that she was willing to blow through the July 1 deadline. House Republicans do not want to blow through the July 1 deadline. We want to negotiate a deal, and we want to do it by July 1. I believe we still can. And, you know, just big picture, what the House Republicans are trying to do in the school budget negotiations is we're trying to empower local districts. We're trying to stop the hundreds of earmarks that go to whether they're certain school districts. I mean, I was reading this here. I was just looking at this. Like, for example, you hear Senate Democrats say, and others say, you know, the at-risk funding is important, right? And we believe it's important. That's why we included it in our proposal, the at-risk funding. So the idea is you fund those districts that have the highest rate of poor people because, you know, those are the ones that need the most help. But then they drop in an earmark for Grosse Pointe schools. They drop in one for Livonia schools. So it's great when you're doing you say, okay, at risk, and then you take the wealthiest districts and you say, and you guys get earmarks, right? What we're saying is rather than take money from these at-risk districts and give it to the rich districts, we could, we don't need to do that. So I just look at it, it's very interesting. They talk about at risk, and then they just shove in earmarks for Grosse Pointe and Livonia and some of these very wealthy districts. Truthfully, there's a process for these districts to get these special projects, and that's going to the taxpayers of their communities and their jurisdictions and asking them for some of these capital items. I mean, that's what why should every taxpayer in Michigan pay for some program in the Mount Clemens schools, right? The people of Mount Clemens should decide if they want that. The people of Grosse Pointe can fund improvements to Grosse Pointe schools, and the people of Livonia can fund their district in Livonia. And what we're trying to do to support that is we're trying to empower these districts and give them 20% more and give it to these districts and let them decide what to do. So if they want to spend it on what's called Grosse Pointe Schools New Technology, well, they can take the 20% extra that House Republicans are giving to districts, and they can spend it on that. But they want that, and then they want the earmarks, right? If the Fraser Public Schools needs a backup generator, they can fund it out of the 20% that we give to everybody. But instead, they want everybody to pay for the Fraser Public School backup generator, okay? Now you look at, I mean, and by the way, these are just, and I can't talk about, you know, like I said, I'm not going to talk about certain people and what they're doing in this process. I'll just say that I have heard that there are hundreds of other earmarks that are not even in this budget that some people, lobbyists and others, are trying to shove into the education budget and many other budgets, okay? And I'm just saying, like, why do we keep siphoning off the school budgets instead of giving them to the local districts for local school boards and local school superintendents and local districts to decide? Politicians in Lansing want to siphon off millions and millions of dollars to decide which algebra companies they use, to decide which test providers they use, all based on which lobby firms hire them. That's what a lot of people up here are doing, and they want to do it with hundreds of things. Some in these documents and others not in these documents. And I'll just say, I really believe that we should only be negotiating based on the things that are in our public documents. So for the House, like we have a House education budget, okay? I'm going to be advocating for the things that are in my House education budget. I'm not going to bring out another 100 things and try to negotiate for those 100 things. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to try to do the things that are in my education budget. I try to put everything out on the table, you know, so that my members and the public, they know what we're trying to accomplish in these negotiations. You see the same thing with the roads plan, right? We've laid out a public roads plan, and that's what we're advocating for. And as I go through these things, though, I mean, I see, you know, they want, the politicians in the Senate budget, they want to decide which company, which for-profit company is hired to advise kids what to do during recess. And I think we could evaluate and say, should there be a company advising kids on how to play at recess? We can, okay, but let's say the local school districts decide we should have a company that advises our kids what to do during recess. Then why is it only one decided by Lansing politicians? That, when I start explaining this to me, I'm an outsider, I'm looking at this, this doesn't make any sense to me. It probably only makes sense to the establishment and people up here who've been doing it for years, and the lobbyists. It's probably the only people it makes sense to. Now, we all know that Joe Tate, he wants to, maybe the Senate, I think the Senate Democrats want to do this too. They want to take money away from schools and give it to this boxing ring in Detroit. They want to give it to a boxing ring in Detroit. They want to take it right out of the school aid, take it away from our local school districts, and fund this boxing gym in Detroit. It's a very strange obsession that Joe Tate and Democrats have with funding boxing rings in Detroit. I want to fund our local schools instead. And you look through this, there's hundreds of these things they shove in here. Just the ones that you see that siphon it off from our local districts. And then there are all of the other ones that you don't see that they could be trying to shove in there. I would just say that, we want to empower local districts, and we're proposing a 20% increase for our local districts, and we're proposing empowering those districts. Now, you look at people like Darren Camilleri and Sarah Anthony. I mean, based on what I've seen in their public comments, they care more about protecting corporate earmarks than they do about shrinking class sizes or funding our local school districts. It's a very strange thing that they're doing. We know that Senate Democrats have voted to cut funding and end teacher evaluations. They voted to repeal the A through F law and third grade reading law. And you look at states like Mississippi that are passing the state of Michigan in fourth grade reading scores. And so let's hope that this education budget starts to turn that around. And I think the way we do that is by eliminating a lot of these regulations on our local school districts, really regulatory reform in education, and then empowering our local districts with 20% more funding in their per pupil foundation allowance, and giving them the flexibility to make their own decisions. So we'll see what happens there. I'll just talk a little bit about what I've seen from the Senate Democrats. I just point out that the Senate Democrat budget is not balanced. I mean, we saw they're about $4 billion off if you take roads and their Senate fiscal agency estimate. They kick 60,000 people off Medicaid. And those are currently eligible people. They kick them right off. They do a lot of things that are out of balance. And that doesn't count all of the placeholders and earmarks. So when you have something and you put in a $100 placeholder, are you trying to fund it or not, right? And so we don't know how many millions of dollars that they would tack on top of these $100 placeholder earmarks in their budget. And then on top of that, you look and you say, what about, rumors that there could be hundreds of other things that people are trying to shove into this budget. And I would just say this could be a very expensive budget. And what I really would say about the Senate Democrat budget is they're just trying to please all the lobbyists. They put in everything all the lobbyists asked for based on old numbers with no intention of balancing this budget. And then they throw it out there under the old Lansing traditions, and they want to blame me and the House Republicans when there are cuts to their budget. And there have to be cuts to their budget because their budget is out of balance. I mean, it's $4 billion out of balance if you don't even consider all the placeholders and the earmarks that aren't even in there yet. So that is very concerning as I look at it, very concerning budget. But we're committed to a July 1 deadline, and we're going to try to get it done for you. And maybe we will have a very positive story to tell the people of Michigan and our school districts, our teachers, and our kids when we potentially have a deal by July 1 on schools and maybe even roads. So I'll stop there. I'm sure you have a lot of questions, although you might not. Is there anyone other than Beth that has a question? Okay, I'll go to Beth. You like how they all defended you? They're like, we're going to make him call on Beth.
Your education plan, it moves a significant amount of school aid fund up into higher ed, and then it uses reserves from the school aid fund for K-12. Is that to free up general fund for roads down the road? And how do you respond to allegations that you guys are essentially raiding the school aid fund?
Well, I would say that, we have to lock in schools. This is what we're saying. So we have to lock in what is the K through 12 number, and what are we going to do on roads? I think we need to lock those in first. And then we'll have a pretty good idea what the rest of the budget's gonna look like, and then we'll be able to answer questions like yours. You know what I mean? So in a negotiation, we have to lock those numbers in first.
$1 billion of your K-12 budget relies on reserves. So like, what happens next year when that rainy day fund is cleared out?
So we're, like I said, we're negotiating a budget. And I think by July 1, we can lock in a deal where we see what the K through 12 budget is. And we can meet that deadline. And I even think we could vote on it by then. And I think some Democrats, depending on which ones you ask, would actually agree with me on that. And then I think we can do the same with roads. And if we do that, it's going to answer a lot of those other questions that you have, Beth.
It's time to use school aid fund for the higher ed budget?
I didn't hear you.
Do you think it's okay to use the school aid fund for the higher ed budget?
Well, I would say that, now correct me if I'm wrong, but haven't they used school aid to cover more education than just K through 12 for many years?
But I don't believe to this extent.
Right, but you agree with me that, because the question you asked me is, do I believe that they should use K through 12, or school aid for higher ed? I think is the question you asked me, right? And I voted for this budget, which does that. And I voted for other budgets that did that. And my belief is, and I concede your point that this budget does more, but your question, I believe, was, do I believe that we should use school aid in higher ed? And the answer to that is yes. And I would say that probably almost all of the Democrats have voted to do that, and almost all of the Republicans have voted to do that. So I think there's consensus that school aid should go to higher ed. It's just a matter of how much. Do you know what I mean? And there may be a couple here and there that oppose it, but at the end of the day, they've almost all of them, unless you voted no on every budget, you voted to do that. Whether it was this year, or last year, or the year before, or when Rick Snyder was here. Do you know what I mean? So hopefully that answers your question. Yeah.
The school aid budget can't pass by July 1st. What do you attribute the holdup to? And also, what do you envision summer break looking like this year?
Yeah, well, I guess I would attribute it to Senate Democrats like Sarah Anthony and Darren Camilleri focusing on lobbyist interests instead of the kids. You know what I mean? So if they're trying to protect all of these earmarks for lobbyists, and then, you know, what's interesting, and I've been looking at every line in the proposals. Some of them have this, like, guaranteed profits. Have you guys seen this? There's like guaranteed profits and overhead for these corporations in some of these earmarks. So it's like they ask for the earmark, and they say the earmark is for this program, okay? But it doesn't just fund the program. It locks in a percentage for their operating expenses or their profit. I just find that very interesting. So you're kind of subsidizing these corporations through these earmarks, you know? So like if I were doing it, I mean, I'd just say, like, you think about it. So let's say you're a for-profit company and you want to make $50,000. So you would just ask for, you know, and say they have a 5% earmark payout in their boilerplate, which they do, okay? So you would just take the $50,000 you want to make, and whatever that number is, where that's 5%, that's what you would ask for in the budget, and you get your $50,000. And then, do you know what I mean? So that's, I mean, why is that even in there? The 5% earmark payout in their boilerplate. So now I'll remind you, the House Republican budget is, is bigger, and some of the media is honest about this. It's bigger than the Senate Democrat budget on education. We actually spend more on education than the Senate Democrats do, and it's 20% more that goes into the classrooms through the per pupil foundation allowance. And according to some people, it's $50,000 more per classroom than the Senate budget. So it's very interesting if you start adding it up that way. Yeah, right here, Colin. And just real quick, on this summer, here's my prediction. You'll see the House Republicans in more this summer than the Senate Democrats. That's my prediction. Yeah.
So you're saying that you believe it's possible to get a road deal done within the next week. Does that mean the Senate's actively engaging with you on that, those plan discussions right now?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I've been, the media doesn't give me any credit for how often I meet with these Democrat leaders.
Well, in the past year, I'm saying that they weren't taking up your plan or taking it seriously or trying to compete with it.
Yeah. I mean, the media, think about this. Like, I think the media concedes that the governor and I have developed a working relationship and that we talk frequently. I think the media has conceded that. And so I think that's proven to be very helpful as we've been going through these budget negotiations. That the trust we've built, the working relationship we've built, I think it's been very helpful as we're working through this. I've been meeting with Brinks, and according to Brinks, we'll just go based on her public comments, she claims that these are productive meetings. You guys have seen those quotes. According to her, they're productive meetings. I'm just hoping that Senate Democrats don't prioritize lobbyists and earmarks over money to our local districts, that's all. And I hope that they're as committed to meeting a July 1 deadline as I am, and as I believe Governor Whitmer is, both on education and roads. And I hope that they see that if we focus on education and roads, we can lock in the rest, and then we know exactly what we need to do on the rest. But we really are in a moment now. It'd be a lot better if the Senate had a roads plan, but we have a House roads plan, and we have a plan the governor's put out pieces of. This could be our moment to do education and to do roads. And if you remember, I came here a long time ago and said they don't work against each other. Remember when Darren Camilleri said, we want education and they want roads. Remember when he said that? You don't have to do that. You can do education and roads. And that's what I'm committed to. So I'm hopeful that we can get something done by July 1. But in order to do it, we're going to have to put our kids and our districts above earmarks and politicians. Yeah, right here. Sorry, guys.
Speaker.
About
Speaking.
50-50. Sometimes you write good stories, sometimes you're pretty hard on me.
Yeah,
So
it's hard on everybody.
Isn't it?
Everybody.
You're tough.
So, comment on the hearing earlier from the Motor City Madman,
Oh,
Ted
yeah.
Nugent. Just wondering what your comments are there, and then I have a follow-up question.
Is this a trap?
Hope not.
It's like, you say what you think, and then I'm going to tell you what I know that you don't know. That's a tough guy. But that's why they hired you. Michigan Advance is one of the best. I'd say Midwesterner is the best, but maybe you guys will meet him someday. But Michigan Advance, and they say the Democrats fund it, but it's much more fair than most of the media. So what does that say about the rest of the media if the Democrat-funded one is like almost as good as the Midwesterner? It's amazing. But anyway, your question. I thought it was great to hear from avid outdoorsman Ted Nugent. I think there's a reason we put Ken Borton in charge of the DNR budget. Now, that's one I don't think will get done by July 1. But Ken is going to do a great job on that budget. He's been a victim of the weaponization of the DNR. He understands the DNR. And I think he's going to work to hold that department accountable as the chair of their budget. I thought it was great that Ted came in and spoke his mind and talked about a lot of the things he's seeing out there. And I know our members really enjoyed it. And there's a lot of people across Michigan who are afraid to talk about their interactions with the DNR and other state of Michigan departments because of fear of weaponization of government. And quite honestly, I don't blame them. you see examples of weaponization of government quite a bit these days. But what's your follow-up? There's the track.
No, actually, you walked right into it, so it's great.
Yeah, I told you.
So it seems that there's an appetite, based on what we heard earlier, to maybe in the budget curb some of their enforcement fund. Has Representative Worthy talked to you about that, and is that on the table if that budget gets completed?
You're saying curb their enforcement power?
Funding that would allow them to do the type of enforcement that was at issue in the hearing.
Yeah, I haven't seen what exactly Ken's proposing on that. I know he's being very thoughtful in his approach, and you know, we see they're taking extra testimony, they're listening to people, but I haven't actually seen what Ken's specific proposal on that is. But I do know that he intends to rein in the DNR. I think he's going to bring accountability to the DNR, and I believe he's looking at things like that. But I have not seen what his actual final proposal is. But I'm sure you're going to like it, and you can ask him about it. But I haven't seen that detail yet. Yes.
Do you have any comments on Secretary Benson's testimony yesterday?
Well, I'll just say, you know, wouldn't it be nice if you remember we were up here a few weeks ago and I said I don't use any notes and you all laughed and you believed me, you know? And I just shuffle these papers up here, but I don't even really look at them. But, you know, I told you I have no notes and everyone laughed and they believed me, right? And the podium was empty. My understanding, based on some really good reporting that I saw, is that when Secretary Benson went into committee, she had someone stationed in the room with a laptop typing to her what to say. That was unbelievable. I've never seen anything like that. And then I saw the picture, and it was very clear from the picture that's what's going on. Is you imagine what you guys would do to me if Gideon over there was typing into a computer what to say, and I had a laptop here, and I was reading it when Beth asked me the question, and then I just said whatever the typical politician would say. I mean, there's no way that I would have been the Gongwer Newsmaker of the Year doing that. You know what I mean? So that was unbelievable, really, to see that Jocelyn Benson can't even answer questions for, she gave a 30-minute presentation. How long did she take questions for? Probably a half hour. What do you guys think? I wasn't there. Was it a half hour or was it shorter? How long did she take questions? No one knows. Probably 15, half hour? Yeah, so just 1/2 hour in 8 years. You know what I mean? Because remember, she wouldn't come here for, maybe when the Democrats controlled it, she did it, but she wouldn't come here when I chaired the House Oversight Committee. So it's like 1/2 hour in, say, 6 of her 8 years. She comes into a committee and she needs somebody to type the answers to her. It's amazing, really. I guess I'm concerned about who's behind this. Like, who is behind what Jocelyn Benson is doing if they're just typing to her what to say? I guess I was really concerned. I had a lot more respect for her until I realized that there was somebody telling her what to say. I couldn't believe that, honestly. Now, I think that she could be a lot more forthcoming with her answers, but what really shocked me was how there was somebody there telling her what to say. So I think we need to look more into that. Who is behind this, and what are they telling? What are they telling? Like, remember, like with Biden, the person with the auto pen, that was really running the government? Well, what is it? Who is telling her to say these things? It's very weird. I don't know who that person was. You guys probably know. And then I just look at it and say, our Secretary of State should stop selling books, should stop campaigning for other offices, and should focus on her job. And I think that her employees should come into the office. I tell the story when it was after the election, and we had to turn in a form. It's part of the law. When you win this election, you've got to go in and turn in the form before you can do an oath of office. We couldn't turn it in because no one works in the office. And it was a whole fiasco for days. None of us legislators could turn in the form because there was no one there to receive it in the Secretary of State's office. So there are all kinds of problems there, and I think the testimony is just scratching the surface, really. But my biggest takeaway was just how shocked I was that there's somebody literally who types the answers to her, and then she just reads them. We're not really getting testimony from Jocelyn Benson. We're getting testimony from somebody else who must really be running a department. Yeah, go ahead, Jordan.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to confirm, going back to the budget a second ago, I've been hearing out of the Senate that there are wants to pass an omnibus budget alongside the education budget to understand how much money there is worth with roads, and I want to make sure I'm not misunderstanding you at all. That's a non-starter in your mind. You're seeing it as just, let's get education done, and then we'll tackle the budgets as they come along, correct?
Yeah, there's a July 1 deadline for education in particular because, we hear the arguments that these school districts really need to know. And so, where we hear the loudest from the media is the importance of the July 1 deadline for schools. And so we passed a July 1, we passed weeks ago an education budget for K through 12. But we did it for all of the school aid. We did it for all of them, so we had flexibility. But I think where there's momentum, and I think if you talk to some Democrats, they would agree, particularly the governor, I think there's momentum that we could do K through 12 and we could do roads. And if we do that, that would really help us identify what is the target for everything else. And then you can start debating, is it DHHS or state police or LARA or probably what Ken wants, DNR, right? I mean, where do those things happen? And I think especially since the media has a lot of concerns about the DHHS budget, and some of you have reported on that, that will be resolved as well in a few weeks when we see what is in the big beautiful bill in the final version. I mean, I haven't read the latest, but I know in some stories they said they were trying to get a vote on that before July 4. So I don't know if they're still on that trajectory, but I'm just saying it may just be a couple weeks and you know what that is. So it makes sense to me to start with these, and I think it makes sense to a lot of other rational thinkers. Some are Democrats, to do it that way. So I wouldn't say it's a non-starter. I would say that it makes the most sense, right? Because you have a House education budget, and you have a House K through 12 budget, and you have a Senate K through 12 budget, okay? You have that. And that's where the most pressure is and where people believe this July 1 matters the most. So you could reconcile that. Why would you wait to figure out what the numbers are in the LARA budget or the DIFS budget or the veterans budget? Why would you why would you let that stop getting the momentum of getting K through 12 done? That makes no sense to me. And I think a lot of rational thinkers and even some Democrats would agree with me on that.
So it sounds like in terms of negotiation for the K through 12 budget are roads and earmarks. Is that something that you need to see from the Senate in order to get an education budget passed?
Well, we want to get, let me back up and just say, I think we should get an education K through 12 budget passed, period. So that not everyone might agree with that. Yeah, go ahead.
You mentioned Winnie Brink's comments last week about your meeting with her. Would you have called that meeting productive?
I'm not gonna, I'm not allowed to comment on some of these things. Not everyone's comfortable with me commenting, and I'm not gonna say who. They're not all comfortable with me commenting, so I'll just say that Winnie Brink said it was productive, and so if I quote her, I'm not commenting on the meeting. Yeah.
The Senate passed some amendments today to ban bump stocks, ghost guns, guns in legislative office buildings. Those dead on arrival, are you willing to take them up a year amount?
No, those are dead on arrival. Yeah. Yeah.
I had a road funding question, I guess a two-part question. Are you still targeting $3 billion for roads, or is that number dropped as you started to look at the whole budget picture? And secondly, are you, in negotiations, are you and the governor and maybe Senator Brinks kind of meeting in the middle, or are you still pretty stuck on the House proposal?
So, the first question, what was the first question?
Are you still targeting $3 billion for roads, or is that number?
So the question was, are you still targeting $3 billion for roads? The answer to that is yes. The second question is, are we meeting in the middle? I would say that, you're asking on roads? Yeah, so you would, to meet in the middle, the Senate Democrats would have to have a position. What is the middle when there's no position? Do you know what I mean? So I won't speak for the Senate Democrats because not everybody wants me to speak for them and is comfortable with as much transparency as I am. I'll just say that, you know, the governor and the House, you know, I think are ready to have some productive conversations on roads. And I'm not going to speak for the Senate because they don't like it when I do that. So, according to what I've heard. So, but in order to come to the middle, the Senate would have to have a position. How do you come to the middle when the Senate has no position? I mean, one thing that I really think is we, you know, because it seems like it should be okay, the Republicans and the Democrats, right? And you know, I'm the leader of the Republicans, and we've had a great relationship with Leader Nesbitt, and generally we're very unified and aligned between our caucuses. It's been one of our strengths for 3 years now. Really unprecedented, and many of you have written that. I think that right now, more than ever, would be a good time for the Senate Democrats to support their leader, Governor Whitmer, and empower her. And I think that that would allow us to find some common ground and get roads done. But if the Senate Democrats have not developed a position, it's kind of hard to meet in the middle. So, you know, if they empowered the governor, I think we'd get a lot further. And maybe they could support the governor, you know, and then we would get a deal. It'd be a lot easier. Was there anyone that didn't ask me a question? Oh, over here. Yeah, I hate, I mean, I love calling on Beth. I'm always going to call on Beth, and I want you to get yours, so go ahead.
Yeah. There are 2 session days left on the calendar, tomorrow and Tuesday.
Right.
Should we expect longer days and/or more calendar days left on the calendar to make a deal or announcement that
I don't think you'll see more days on the calendar from the House. You know, like you said, we're here Thursday, we're here on the 1st. So I don't think you'll see more days from us, but if we need more days in order to get it done, you'll get those days. Like if we had to come in on a Saturday to do it, we would do it. But I really feel like with Thursday and July 1, you know, we could do it with those 2 days. I think we could do it. And then, you know, we have a number of days over the summer scheduled, and I'd like to see more days over the summer, but there's no plan to do that right now.
the next date is July 15th, so
Right.
if we don't get it done by the 1st, there should be no anticipation to add actually after that, or we are.
Oh, I thought your question was adding days between July 1 and now. So I would, if I had to, I would add more days between now and July 1 because the House Republicans are 100% committed to getting this done. I'm just saying I don't think I'm going to have to add more days because I have July 1. If I feel a need like to do it, I will. I don't think we're going to have to because I think I've got everything I need to do it Thursday and July 1 once we get the deal. On the other part of your question, days after July 1, I'm open to that if it's needed, you know. But no plan to do that right now because we have July 15 And then we've got, you know, the week after that, and we've got July 29. I think we've got, you know, 5 days in there that we can use after July 15th. Yeah.
I think since the start of session, the House and Senate has sent a total of 6 bills to the governor.
Is it 6?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. I thought it was 5. Is it 5 or 6? 5 have been signed and 1 is not. Or is it 6? I don't know the answer. Is it 6?
I'll have to double check. I thought
You
it
know?
was 6.
So there's the 2. There's the school aid. I just want to, the sick leave and the tip credit. The 2 that the Democrats asked for that specifically Brinks wanted on Benson to fix that mess with their website that the Midwesterner's been talking about. And then the snow days is 5. And is there a 6? There could be a 6, because what do you think, Josiah? Is there a 6? All right, well, maybe there is.
So maybe it's just 5.
I don't know.
Was that spousal disclosure?
Spousal disclosure.
It's one of the Jocelyn Benson website.
Oh, that's the.
Yeah. Anyway, I don't know. It could be 6.
In any case, about a third of those were to give you guys extra time to submit your disclosures.
Yeah, where Brinks asked for.
Yeah. What message do you think that sends to voters that you sent that many bills to the governor in the first 6 months?
What were the last 2 or 3 words you said?
Over the last 6 months.
Well, I'd say, you know, first of all, I don't know that we should measure ourselves by how many public acts get done. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's a lot more. Really, if you look at what we've done over the last 6 months, I think what we've done is really important. We're reestablishing the power of the House and the legislative branch in government. I mean, the first thing we did was we kicked all the lobbyists off the House floor, even the governor's lobbyists. We kicked them off the floor. Then we created an oversight committee and gave it unprecedented subpoena power. And you guys have read, I mean, they're issuing depositions now. They're doing subpoenas. People are coming in and getting deposed. They're being subpoenaed. There's things going on there. You know what I mean? You look at that. There's a lot of investigating going on. We've been bringing unprecedented disclosure through the HEAT plan, the Hall Ethics Accountability and Transparency Plan. Look at what we've done with the earmarks, where they're all disclosed on a website now. So there's a lot going on with the oversight function. You see us going through the budget and looking at it and trying to find value for tax dollars for people. I mean, under Whitmer, the budget is increased 43%. Somebody needs to take a look at this and look at all these programs and kind of right-size it. So we're going through that budget and we're trying to get the best value for your dollars. So I think there are a lot of ways you could measure it, right? Oversight. You can look at are we successful in reforming government through the budget process? And then the bills you pass, right? And Democrats repealed a lot of laws, right? You can repeal laws, you can add new laws. What I'm particularly proud of, though, is the stuff we're getting through the House. And in particular, like you look at our education plan, and I read people that, like Craig Mauger, who are now very concerned about education, which is really good. Well, we put forward like 15 bills that are bipartisan that will move the needle on education, whether that's making phonics the official academic standard of Michigan, whether it's reducing the number of curriculum and providing peer-tested curriculum, whether it's focusing on real-life skills by allowing dual enrollment from skilled trades. You can go on and on and on about these bills. I mean, and they all pass with 80 votes, 90 votes, in many cases 20, 30 Democrats. So these are examples of things we've done bipartisan through the House. And there's all kinds of things like that. We voted to reverse the Democrat income tax hike. There's 7 Democrats who voted to do that with us. You look at what we've done on so many issues really. People come to me, they say, I can't believe how unified the Republicans are and how you were able to advance legislation on so many issues. I mean, look at our roads plan to fix the local roads without raising taxes. Governor Whitmer says I'm the only legislative leader she's worked with the guts and the brains to come up with a roads plan and pass it through the chamber. So I'm actually pretty proud of the work we've done, and you know, eventually I think the Senate will adopt a lot of those bills, but they haven't yet. Yeah.
Will the House allow a vote on a resolution acknowledging Pride Month before Pride Month ends, and why hasn't it done so?
No.
Is there a reason why?
No, I'm not gonna do that. Any other, I don't think one's been introduced, but if one's introduced, I'm not. In the House?
I've been told that it's just been stymied.
No resolution has been introduced, but if they did introduce a resolution, it would not be taken up for a vote, so. Any other questions? Okay. I don't know, I haven't seen a resolution. I've asked our people, and last I heard there was no resolution, but.
Morgan put one forward and has just not heard anything.
Have you seen it? Have you guys actually seen a resolution number?
He was waiting on your office to let them.
You think
That he wasn't communicated with your office said, oh, we're looking at it, and then that was when the communication happened.
I see. Do you think that's how it works? So you introduce a resolution and it goes into a black box and you don't get a number assigned? That's not how it works. No resolution has been introduced, but we aren't gonna do that resolution, so. Any other questions? All right, well, thank you, media. Maybe I'll be back with great news very soon, so we'll see. All right.